Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast, Risk For Heartbreak. I am your host, Christina, and I'm so glad you decided to join me today. For those of you who are new here, I pray you find value in at least one thing I say today. And to my old and faithful returning crew, you know just how much I appreciate you. So, without further ado, let's jump into it. You'll often hear me say, we are made for relationships. Because it is my belief that our entire experience upon this earth, in this era, in this time, in this season, with the tools that we have and the people around us, our purpose is to have relationships. There are so many variations of relationships, from creator to creation, from creation to non-human creation, creation to human creation, human to human, and literally the list goes on. We have been blessed with so many avenues to relate to one another, even within those types of relationships, right? So there are no shortages of ways that we as humans have our needs met through relating to each other. Growing up as a baby sibling, I'm the baby, in case you didn't notice, I learned a lot about just watching my brother and sister. I learned from their battles, I learned from their successes, their mistakes, and their shortcomings, and I reaped the benefits of the way that they paved for me before I even got to the way. I also reaped the benefits of learning from them while they were making lots of big, hearty mistakes, and I didn't go and make those same ones. Now, I did make my own though, so. It was because of that relationship, or my relationship to my brother and my sister, that I learned how to do life as a little person. But then, of course, they went off to university, and I was still really young, 12 years young to be exact, and I had to kind of just surf this wave that they left for me. And, I was pretty impressionable at 12 years old, as I think most 12-year-olds are, right? I had to find new relationships for myself. And even though my sister and my brother were there during my more formative years, I was much younger than them. So like 7 years younger. So I had a lot of time alone to kind of just work things out by myself, even though they were present in the house. I found ways to kind of just meet my social needs outside of school and church and neighborhood friends, etc., by playing with my stuffed animals, and I would teach them, I would raise them, I would socialize my stuffed animals and socialize with them. Little Miss Ward, as my teachers and my elementary school administrators would refer to me as, and you guys have heard this before if you've been on the podcast any amount of time, they would call me Little Miss Ward. And Little Miss Ward was really independent, and she had this pattern that was set very early on to kind of just do for herself and by herself. Now, as an adult, I have found myself trying to make a conscious effort to allow others to do for me, because for so long I have been able to do for myself, not completely and wholly, right? Like, there are things that I still need help for, but for the most part, I have been. And more importantly, I have learned how to ask for help, how to plan social interactions with my friends, to kind of promote myself. I've learned how to do, although I really do not like doing that. That's why you guys don't really see me promoting myself ever. It's actually it's like the opposite of who I am as a human being. I need someone else to do it. Sorry. But I understand that social currency is a thing. I understand that promoting yourself will yield results. So I'm slowly but surely working on that. But I have had to labor, though, at getting my needs met relationally through others, because, to be frank, I'm really not motivated by external stimuli. I'm very much an introvert, and I can be an ambivert when I have to. Usually in my jobs, I'm ambiverted, right? I'm not an extrovert. I will be ambiverted, meaning that I still have my reclusive ways. I am very observant, but I do know how to jump in when it's time for me to jump in, and I know how to show up when it's time for me to show up. It's just rather exhausting. Independence in this context is defined as a natural order for a developing child and a young adult to kind of separate appropriately from their parents. And within this definition of independence comes the word autonomy, which you guys have probably heard a lot. And that word is often associated with positive feelings of being the one who determines and governs your own behavior, thus giving you a very sense of freedom, right? And efficacy. And research has found that the need for autonomy is actually really critical to a person's development and their sense of self, and for their overall psychological and physical well-being. Now, on the flip side, Hyperindependence is often said to be birthed from trauma. Okay. It is a mode of living in which you are solely reliant on yourself. Now, the Center of Anxiety.org says that hyperindependence implies an excessive desire to do everything independently, even when assistance is available, and is beyond healthy. Of course, it is total self-reliance. A hyper-independent individual does not actually seek help or express their feelings, nor do they rely on others. Like so many things, too much of one thing can be a bad thing for everything. And in the case of hyper-independence, when we are operating from this state of being, we are kind of cutting off the value that we could have within a relationship. And I don't mean to make either of these things kind of sound like a choice, because it is, I think, better to understand that these two things are nurtured behaviors. Independence, of course, is fostered growth and self-sufficiency, while hyper-independence is reactionary, or it is a learned survival mechanism or that is usually birthed from childhood neglect or trauma or uncertainty or feeling of lack and safety, etc. Both will eventually, though, become unconscious choosing. And to undo that unconscious choosing, or undo the behavior that follows that later in life, to adjust your life and your relationships, is just really not as easy as dropping an Uno reverse card down on the table, okay? Especially if there has been any level of positive reinforcement around these behaviors, right? Independence or hyper-independence, if they have been positively reinforced, wow, trying to get out of that behavior is going to be particularly hard, and I know firsthand. I think there's a very sinister way that both of these can kind of creep into the life of a woman, particularly in this day and age when we have more access, we have more autonomy, we have the ability to actualize ourselves as women. And I want to speak a little bit about that today. So let's just go ahead and jump into this thought. Does the independence help or hurt you as a woman? And we're not even really going to speak about the as a woman part, but does it help or hurt you being independent or hyper independent? So without further ado, let's relate. Going to school in New York, Long Island, by the way, I graduated and I was living in NYC. It created some truly life-altering experiences for me in my late teens to my early 20s, okay? I learned how to get very far away from my parents, from my home, from my family, the culture that I was raised in and very familiar with. I learned how to explore a new state, a new city, new cultures, new foods, new types of friendships, new types of people. I learned how to drive in a new state, which if you've ever driven in New York, Long Island, upstate, city, honey, okay, it's a different beast, very different than Florida, okay? I had the opportunity to just do all of these things and more alone. And I will never forget when my parents moved me into my first dorm room. I lived in the penthouse of Post Hall at Long Island University. I don't know how I got in the penthouse, but I was in a really nice, we had AC in our dorm room, and a lot of them didn't have AC because it's New York, right? And I remember when we were finished moving all of my stuff in and setting things up, my parents, they just up and left to go back to Virginia. So Virginia is the halfway point between Florida and New York. That's where we always would stop when I was traveling back and forth, unless I was driving by myself, which I did a lot, like winter breaks and summer breaks. I would go by myself and I would drive all 13 hours, would not stop. That was the type of time I was on. But my parents did stop, of course, in Virginia so that they could get rest and then go the rest of the way the next day. But I'll never forget, we got all my things together and then they just left. And I really was like, wow, y'all just gonna leave like that? You're not gonna spend a little time? We're not gonna go out to dinner or something? No, my parents just left. Now, I'm their third child, so it's not like I'm the first where it's like, oh my gosh, my first babies. No, they had done this before. This was nothing new. Now, both of my brother and sister went to UF, so they didn't go as far as I did, but my parents were pros at this by this time. I, however, bawled my eyes out for maybe a good hour, and then I got to it. I started walking the campus. I just was wanting to see what else there was that I had not seen on my tour that I'd come like the month or two prior during the summer season to tour the campus, etc. So I got to it. I cried and then I got to it. And although Little Miss Ward had always had this kind of exposure to asserting her autonomy, to asserting her independence and just crying and getting to it, this was really the first time in her life that she was really test driving that car and owning it and being left to figure it out. Okay. When my parents left, I had to figure it out, you guys. And at this point, something just shifted in me. Now, I'll never forget when I got my first trophy when I was 7 years old. Running track, I was a sprinter and I was really good, okay? First trophy, that created a beast in me. And this was another monumental moment that created a beast in me. I found myself standing up to new challenges after new challenges that if I had not had the right priming before, if I hadn't had a brother and sister who kind of paved the way before and showed me how to kind of like stand up for myself and be independent and be adventurous, because they were both very adventurous. And, you know, we played outside. I've got scars on my legs and like we played and we played hard. If I didn't have that, I think this experience might have crushed me, kind of sending me back into my little introverted shell. But as surely as the occasion rose, so did so I graduated, and then before I graduated, I was auditioning for Broadway already. So I had I think it was probably like, we did like a showcase or something, and I got invited to audition for a Broadway show. That was freaking amazing. I hadn't even graduated yet. And after I did graduate, I went straight into the city and went to work. I was performing in theater. I was doing modeling. I was small scale runway modeling, small scale fitness modeling. I was acting in film. Like, we got to it. We got straight to it. No holds barred. I was literally living what Little Miss Ward had once dreamed and talked about. And it wasn't for the faint of heart, honestly. To go from Florida to New York, like, is a big transition, especially going into the city. You just have to love it. And people say that all the time. Either you love it or you don't, or you visit it and you love it and that's what you love it for, or you really want to be there. And I definitely wanted to be there. Still to this day, New York is like a heartbeat to me, although I will not be moving back. Nonetheless, I really relied on the quiet help of my parents. So my parents definitely helped me. I did not have to work the first 3 years of being in university. My dad would send me money every week, and I'm grateful for that. I know that that's not a lot of people's stories, and that it is definitely a place of privilege that I come from. But I got my first job, not my first job. My first job I got when I was 14 years old. That's another thing that I didn't talk about, but I got a job. As soon as I was able to get a job, I was working. And by the time I was 19, had 2 jobs. But I didn't work the first 3 years of my university career. I didn't start working until my senior year, my last year. And I'm glad I did, first of all, because, that transition from not working to working would have been, I think, a little bit rough after getting out. So nonetheless, though, like, my parents did take care of like my car insurance, my cell phone. There were things that I didn't take care of, right? So I made a ton of mistakes, of course. I blew my money on shoes and clothes, the money that my dad would send me. Like, it wasn't a ton of money, but it was enough to get things done back in the day, okay? But we fast forward. I think I just continued to have this appetite for independence. Even though I had this help, I had an appetite for independence. And I remember my parents slowly weaning me off the help. I remember that. Okay, Christina, now it's time for you to pay for your car insurance. Okay, Christina, now it's time for you to pay for your cell phone, right? Those types of things. And I love that they did that. They didn't make me do it all at once, because that might have been traumatizing to me. But anyway, I had a breakup when I lived in New York City. After I graduated, I was in the city, and I had a breakup. So I had to kind of regroup. I headed back to Florida for a year before going out to LA. And I really wanted to just get my legs underneath me. So while I was in Florida, I was working multiple jobs. I was managing at a store. I had worked interim at Lululemon. Not interim. I mean, I was full-time from the time that my senior year through those few years after I graduated in New York City. And then when I moved to Florida, I transferred. And then when I moved to LA, I actually transferred. So I worked for Lululemon for almost 7 years or so. Between all of the, that can't be right. 6 years, maybe 6 years or so. And really paved the way. I was a manager. I was team lead over visual merchandising. I was helping open stores in all 3 states. I helped prep stores for opening and training people to open stores in all 3 states. Like, we were getting to it. But on the side was also acting. Okay. I was also acting, and I was also dancing, doing aerial. So there was never a shortage of me getting after it. Okay. That is who I am. I would work 5 days a week, train aerial, maybe 3 to 4 days a week. I was training flying trapeze, and then I'd fly to Orlando. This was when I was in Florida, train for a few hours. Like, it was insane. I don't know what kind of energy I was on, but it was crazy. Okay. I was auditioning for national circus tours. There was some really great things happening, and I was just getting after it. And those failures that I did experience within all of that, like, I did not book Broadway. Okay. I did not go to Broadway right out of university. How crazy would it have been if I did? I did not go on the national circus tour, though I got to audition, because I fell off the lyra in my audition, which never had happened to me before. Nerves or something like that. So, but I didn't go, and that's fine. I don't think I needed to. I ended up getting a residency when I went out to LA. I was teaching, and then I got a residency at a club. So I was performing, and honestly, that was probably one of the best things for me. I was really just asserting all of the gifts and the talents that God had for me. So when I got to LA, I'm auditioning nonstop. I'm booking small films, web series. Those were really big back then. I was very much on the scene in LA. LA can be a very dark place. So, like, if you're not really solid in your convictions and you're not mind strong, LA will eat you alive. The same way with New York. I think New York will be the same, and maybe Miami as well. But like I said, I got this club residency. I was performing aerial Fridays and Saturday nights. Clubs are not my scene. They've never been my scene, ever. Even when I was in university, I would go here and there with friends, but it's never been something I've desired to do. But what I really desired to do was to perform. So when I got up there, I'm performing over 6,000 people each night, EDM, hip hop. I'm performing over the hottest artists, some artists that are still very hot today. I'm talking about flying over the DJ booth. I was getting after it. I would get home at 4 a.m. I remember going to Subway. I'd eat my sub, go to sleep by 4:30. I'd be up at 7. Why was I up at 7? Because I had to go to church to sing in the choir, because I was in the choir and the praise team. So I'd go to church. I'd sing in 2 services, getting after it. What was sleep? I didn't know it. I did not know sleep until probably like the last few years, if I'm being honest. Okay. I had my family. I would go see them. But the way that all of this was really just happening by myself is crazy. I did create friendships. I created new friendships. I have really good friends out in LA. This entire period, though, my drive was absolutely fueled by this intense desire to do it on my own, to accomplish it on my own. And there were ways that were created out of no way, because God kept me. He kept me. There were times when I didn't really have money. I would not even tell my family I didn't have money. I would do things like selling my Lululemon, do little odd jobs off Craigslist so that I could make the money. I remember one time my brother was like, "You have to tell us if you need help financially," because there was one time I didn't do that well. And he was like, "You got to tell us." And I was like, "I just don't want to tell you, because I want to be able to do it on my own." I threw so many things at the wall to see what would stick, and I threw them at the wall with great faith. I was battling, though, internally throughout this whole time, because there was also this part of me that was like, if I ask for help, I failed. And it was really important for me to be able to accomplish this stuff all on my own. I was solving problems that in like a 6 months time that probably could have been solved in a month's time if I had just asked for help. If I had just sought help, if I had just told somebody the situation that I was in. I was building a life out of bits and bobs, okay? Piecemealing my life together, plugging it all together to create a life that I thought was worth having. And it was really not about the quality of life at this time. It was really about the amount of life that I was having. Right. I was having a lot of life. There was a lot of things going on. Now I'm beginning to slow down, and I'm like, please, no more things. I cannot even take this risk. I've been risking my life my entire life. So I'm seeing things a little bit differently, but I had no pace. I had no pace it was just straight sprinting the entire 18 to 36, 37, 38. Okay? Straight sprinting a marathon. When you sprint a marathon, unless you are Kenyan. My dog thought I said his name. I didn't say your name, Samson. Your name is Samson, not Kenyan. You will burn out if you sprint a marathon. If you try, you can only do that for so long before you burn out, and the race is not done and you're burned out. So I think I'm finding myself in this place where I'm like, I've reached burnout, and I'm like, absolutely, I don't want to do anything but breathe. I just want to rest and breathe. So I want to mention what was happening. This is a good segue underneath all of that success, all of the great things that were happening, because there was a lot of amazing things. Having my own private training business, working with other companies, training aerialists. There are people that have gone on that were my students, that have gone on to own studios, that have gone on to perform themselves in circuses, so much other life was birthed from the seeds that I got to plant. And I'm so grateful. But in this time of me dropping seeds in everyone and planting in their gardens to help their gardens flourish, I was drying up. I couldn't tell it at the time, but now I can see. I can see that if I had relied and leaned more into my relationships for assistance, I might actually be farther than I am in my life. Now, I believe everything happens for a reason, and God's timing is perfect, but my timing is not perfect. And a lot of this locomotive was in my timing. When I look back, there were things that I changed about my life that I don't want to say I wish I hadn't changed, because like I said, I believe we are where we are for the reason that we are, and the time frame with the tools that we have, with the relationships, etc. I believe that is all purposeful. I believe it's ordered. But there are things that I changed about my life, like in high school, changing the major that I was going to. I was going to actually go to school for law. And I didn't. I didn't go to school and run track when I should have. I didn't run in university. I dropped so many friendships. I began to just kind of like hyper focus on schooling. Great things were happening, you guys. I don't want this to sound like, oh, Christina, it sounds like you just hate your life or something. I don't. There were wonderful things happening, but when I look back, I take a step back, I was really inward and forward. I was not outward and lateral. And there's just something that, it's starting to storm. I'm so excited. There's something about reaching laterally to those around you so you guys can all rise together that I think adds quality to your years, not necessarily quantity. Yes, I could have been farther in my relationships and in my life if I had reached side to side more and stopped trying to power drive everything. I might have avoided some of the life decisions that I made by myself. I might have avoided some trauma that I experienced because I was doing it in my own self. I would have maybe incurred a little less debt if I had considered what my dad told me. Don't go to New York City. You don't have to go to a private university out of state. You can actually stay here and go to a school in Florida because it'll be paid for. There's so many things that I faced in my entire life that I didn't have to go alone. And that even if they happened in the aloneness, if I had shared, I might have experienced less turmoil. I may not have needed to reclaim my inner strength, pitfall after pitfall, hurt after hurt, trauma after trauma. my whole point in telling this is that in reflection is that I acknowledge that there are many ways that independence has benefited and profited me. Certainly, my sense of self-efficacy is very strong. My ability to go out and do by myself is actually really strong. I could move to a new country by myself and I wouldn't be afraid, you know? However, we aren't made to live life singly, solitarily. We are meant to live life in community with relationships. And what I have noticed is that I fear others letting me down. I fear lack of safety, lack of certainty when it comes to others. And that's why I'd rather just do it on my own. And they say, if you want something done, just do it. I think I had that mindset from a young girl, and I don't know how that formed because I always had lots of help around me, but I do think there's some things that happened that caused me to turn so inward that it was like, you know what? I know I can depend on me. I can depend on the Heavenly Father and I can depend on me. And I'm safe in those two places. When you enter somebody else into the chat, things get a little dicey. They get a little unsafe. So I want to protect what little bit of innocence that I have left that hasn't been taken from me when I have let others in and they've taken advantage of it. And so I know hyperindependence is not healthy, as the definition stated. You know, it causes you to be reclusive and untrusting. Often it is birthed from neglect and traumas. I definitely was not neglected, not in my family relationships, but I think that there is some missteps going on elsewhere that has caused me to just really be like, I'm good on my own. And even now I'm still very much battling that mentally of like letting certain types of people in and being okay in groupings of people. Like I'm, very observant. I don't insert myself into certain things because I just would rather be certain. So anyway, I say all of this and what I'm about to say sounds so contradictory, but it is absolutely harder to be alone. And that's not what God intended for us. He didn't intend for us to be alone. He intended us to grow together. From the beginning, Adam was with creation. And then he had a suitable helper made for him that was more like him. And then they multiplied and multiplied and then multiplied, and generations and communities of people and villages. We talk about this all the time. Where are the villages anymore? We all are so inward now. And so I'm fighting against that. Although it's uncomfortable for me actually to let people in and have community. So I have my selects and, I will continue to grow those things. I think I talked to you guys about this book, Relational Intelligence, and we're about to go because this is over. But Relational Intelligence by my pastor, Dr. Darius Daniels. And he, in the book, talks about how to build relationships. So you have like your inner circle, a medium circle, and then acquaintanceship type relationships. Everyone does not have to be in your inner. And I know very few are in my inner because that is the nearest and dearest to me. I have some medium style relationships, and then I have some out there that I will be quick to call an acquaintance, even though they might call me a friend, because I'm very, very specific about how I group people and how close they are to me. Friends are here. So anyway, I don't mean to speak from fear. I'm just being honest here with this episode. Being independent and being hyper independent has definitely profited me in a lot of ways, but it has also left me alone in many others, and has left me to now try to dismember and deconstruct and peel back the onions and the layers that have been fortified through positive reinforcement. Because there are many places that being hyper independent and independent versus interdependence, which God, I believe, wants for us to have, is interdependence. That independence and that hyper independence has not benefited me. It's actually debited from my life. And so, this podcast is all about helping us become higher risk for heartbreak. that means that we are inserting ourselves into vulnerable positions and places, not vulnerable in a irresponsible way, but in a conscious way, consciously choosing, not working from this unconscious or subconscious place that has just been nurtured into you. So anyway, you guys, this is it. I don't have anything else more to say. Actually, I have tons more to say. I always have more to say, but this is the end of the podcast. I did want to just kind of share that because it's something that I'm actually currently going through, is like really learning how to welcome people into the fold of Christina and be okay in their folds. Because it's just not something that I have really a ton of experience in. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed all my talking. We've gone over 30 minutes for sure. Thank you guys so much for loving yourself so that you can then go and love your neighbor. I will see you next time.